I've been at this for about 50 years, and I've always said that drug addiction is a disease. It's a serious disease. It is resistant to treatment. It is subject to relapse, and it can be fatal. You are not going to police your way out of this. You're going to treat your way out of this, and it's going to take a multifaceted treatment approach and treatment team. You guys are very critical of the way that this has been approached over the last 50 years. But what I love about the two of you is you don't just criticize what's been done. You have some very constructive ideas and attitudes about what should be done. I hate people that just criticize. I mean, shit, anybody can criticize.
Right.
But you guys don't just criticize. You say, in the alternative, let's consider some other things. So let's talk about this. Clayton, let me start with you. What is your biggest problem with what's been done over the last 50 years?
Oh, man, I think the biggest problem for me is just the lives that have been destroyed. Like, people's lives have been taken apart by this war on drugs, and it's concentrated in certain areas where people are already somewhat at a disadvantage from just the circumstances that they're living in. And the war on drugs has destroyed a lot of Black families, a lot of families, period. But I know in my community, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it be the reason somebody get pulled over. I've seen it be the reason people get harassed. I see it's the reason somebody has to go sit in jail. They have to put up their house to get this person bailed out. Like, I've seen it unravel people's lives. And I do stand up, and just going around the country, I've been pulled over in every state I've driven in, just about. So, like, you have to start getting creative with how you go get yourself out these situations. Yeah, I smoke weed a little bit, so my thing was I never carry more than I can eat. You know, I'm not going to jail for weed. I'm gonna eat this, right. And yeah. So it's things like that. That's kind of my biggest problem, is just seeing it, tear apart a whole community. And I mean, you saw how crack was treated when it came out. It was a big fear campaign, and you compare that now to what the opioids are doing, and people have a little bit more compassion, and it's a shame that that's what it takes. But I'm glad people are starting to see it is a disease.
It takes some involvement, I think, because a lot of those people that were criticizing addicts in the past are now among them because of this opioid crisis. So all of a sudden they go, hey, this is not so hard to get into. And I've never yet met anybody that told me they started doing drugs because they wanted to become an addict.
Never. Yeah. Yeah. It's not an attractive lifestyle.
Yeah. It's not easy, and it's a very destructive lifestyle, and people are miserable. So, Clayton, what's been wrong with the approach, and where did it go wrong? How did this become a war instead of a partnership? How did it become a war instead of a movement to provide resources to treat these people with this disease?
Oh, man. Well, I think one thing me and Greg always talking about is whenever you have a war, you got to have casualties. So these people are the casualties of this war. And it's not a war on drugs. It's a war on people. If it was a war on drugs, you would stop the drugs from coming in. You would approach it in a different way. And just it being enforced on such a street level where it's already out there in there. And then the policies that they have where career criminals really just tell on other people to get out to continue doing crime is, yeah.
Greg, how did you two get together? Because you're kind of an odd couple.
We are. No, we are really like the next buddy cop movie that's going to be coming out here.
We already took back-to-back photos. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we did. Yeah, we did the whole photo shoot with it. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of a thing where I've been working in public policy for a few years now, since about 2015. Previously, I was an attorney working in the Maryland area. I was a clerk for a judge, and so I've always been around this. But my first exposure really to the other side of the drug war was during law school, working in the pardons office. And my dad was a cop, and so I really only saw the criminal justice system kind of from that arrest and never seeing kind of the back end of it. And when I worked in the commutations office, I got to kind of see that back end. So once someone goes to the system, how are we actually correcting this behavior? How are we doing this? And all I saw was lengthy sentences, not a lot of work on, treating the underlying causes of this criminogenic behavior through addiction. So that's where I really got my passion for this, and left the world of law because it's terrible, and I recommend no one do it. And went into public policy, and I got connected with Lava for Good through some connections, trying to help people that were wrongfully convicted of certain crimes to get out of prison. And through that, we talked about how the drug war is really kind of the biggest wrongful conviction that we have, in the criminal justice system societally. And we said we would love to do an entertaining podcast to kind of talk about this. And I have kind of the nerdy policy chops, and then Clayton has this amazing, lived experience and intelligence and advocacy on this issue. And, we started hearing his stand up, which kind of mixed and blended, kind of the real life experience, but just, hilarity. If you ever get a chance to see Clayton, he's amazing live. And so, it was just kind of this, weird combination of people that agreed on this issue. And hopefully it kind of comes into an entertaining and informative package.
I told you I got pulled over in every state, right?
Right.
I needed somebody like Greg in case I did get locked up in any of these states. So it just pays to know him on the policy side. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have an attorney just to keep him in your back seat. And then when you drive around, you got to just roll down the back window instead of the front window and say, talk to him.
Please talk to him.
Yeah, might throw my dad's business card on the back of my license, just in case. So,
yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Greg, you clerked for Judge Ripken in the circuit court in Maryland, and we know Baltimore is a place where drugs have really been rampant and have been on the streets a lot. I guess as much there as any city its size in the United States. Is this an urban origin? Is it a racial thing? Is it unemployment? What is it that is driving this epidemic in America? And why have they missed the mark so much in their policy approach to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the common denominator that you see throughout this, and we go through this in the podcast, is addiction starts to increase and drive and get to these levels when you see kind of social interactions decrease, when you see hopelessness, when you see, depression start to rise. And so, there's a lot of examples, particularly during the infancy of the opioid epidemic, that it was these kind of, Rust Belt towns that had these bustling factories and job opportunities and high schools and really a lot of things. And then once that started to dwindle, you saw people kind of reaching for other things to kind of fill those holes in that despair. And that's what's happening in places like Baltimore. But this is not an urban issue. This is not a suburban issue. It's touching every part of America. And that's what I think makes this, current epidemic with fentanyl and opiates so unique, where it is touching, beyond just kind of the inner city. It's going across racial demographics. And so I think that's really where we're hitting it. And I think, to answer your second question on how are these policies missing, overall, we're taking this criminal justice approach to stop this behavior that we don't want to see, rather than making it a health issue. We are actually saying, what does the evidence say? What are the underlying issues, and how do we work alongside people to treat them and, stop the demand? We've been really targeted on the supply aspects of the drug war, which is obviously important, but the demand aspect is so much more critical. If you can reduce that demand, actually help people come through, that's the way you get out of this. But that has been the other side of it that we have not done from a national standpoint to really effectively treat this. And I think that's where a lot of places are missing the mark.